Welcome to the latest episode of Thinking Tackle. I'm Ali Hamidi and you join us at the magnificent Linear Fisheries complex in Oxford. We're on Hunt's Corner and as you can see over my shoulder is my good friend and Thinking Tackle regular James Armstrong. He's bent into a surface hook carp. Oh no, how's your timing? It's just come off, but it's been a really good start. Further down the bank is a Thinking Tackle debutant in Richard Stewart. He's bagged 3 carp already. I've had one. Jimmy's got one in the net, but bad luck, eh, mate? Well, it's been a good start up till now, but hopefully we've got loads of surface methods to show you. The fish are all over the top, so let's crack on with those tactics and let's see these fish. Well, here we go, a lovely 21-pound Hunt's Corner mirror. A great start, first chuck this one, and I really thought it was going to lead to a procession of carp, but it hasn't. It's been tricky, but we're going to keep plugging away. Jimmy's caught one down the bank as well, and Richard has nailed quite a few this morning, so let's have a look at his fish first. Well, here we are, round with Thinking Tackle, first timer. Richard, what a start, mate.
What a start, mate. I can't get over the relief, Al. This fish has really gone some way to settling my first timer nerves, mate. It really has.
Well, you had nothing to be nervous about because, you know, we didn't get the rods out till this morning. No. And you've winkled out this one. How big is it? This one's
£29.4, mate, which makes it my biggest ever zig caught carp.
And you've had another 2, and what methods have you had them on?
The other 2 have both come to zigs.
Yeah.
And there's a small common which took a little bit of black foam tipped with red in 12 foot in about sort of 12 foot zig in about 13 foot of water, mate. And then the other one came to just plain old black foam.
Right, brilliant. And I believe you've got them going on the surface as well.
Absolutely, as we speak, mate, they are troughing.
Are they?
Over our shoulders. I'm itching to get back involved because they're Pac-Maning everything down.
Well, what a stunning carp, a great way to start. And this is your type of water, isn't it? Small, intimate pool.
Mate, I like to think I can turn my hand to most things, but yeah, I do enjoy the, you know, the close quarter stuff, and this was certainly a big part of making sure that this trip's going to be memorable for me.
Well, they're chomping off the top, and I know Richard's dying to get that surface fishing rod out, so put this beauty back and crack on, mate.
Well, that really didn't take long. Like I said, the fish were absolutely Pac-Maning the baits out there, and this little probably 12 or 13 pound mirror tipped up, sucked in my little pink hook bait. I was able to strike, and he had, as you saw, about a 5 or 10 minute scrap on his hands, which I luckily won. And here's the result, a lovely grey Hunt's Corner carp. This is number 4 on the floaters. Made me wait a little bit longer this time, but this guy, as you've just seen, has absolutely run me right across the lake. Probably stripped 30 or 40 yards on its first run. Incredible, really. I've had a few aborted takes and I wasn't quite sure whether that one had got it. And this time I didn't need to strike because he exploded away and the controller float had set the hook already. So determined kite round to the right here. Could see me in trouble, but just like the others, he's also kicked out into open water again, so just keep coming. They're so scrappy at this time of year, full of energy. We might just get our chance now. There we go, wonderful. Well, here's fish number 6. Just follows a small, sort of dumpy, characterful mirror that I also tripped up on a pink hook bait in amongst those trout pellets. Seeing fish like this, hoovering up those floaters, really gets the adrenaline going, and for me, this is what summer fishing is all about.
A lovely dark Hunt's Corner carp around mid doubles. Now we're going to take a look at our surface rigs.
Well, I've managed to drag James out of the water from those waders and those carp that are feeding away. Let's have a look at the surface rigs.
Yep.
Very simple but effective. So I think the first thing, let's have a look at the hook end. So talk to me about the hook bait, exactly how you've attached it to that hook first.
Okay, well like you said, mate, very simple. I've quite literally super glued the hook bait to the back of the shank.
Right, so what I've noticed that's not your normal round pop-up, is it?
No, it's not. No, I've whittled it down just in the shape of a floater. I know it's a different colour, but I've tried to mimic the shape of the floaters, which are like a little bit cylindrical.
Okay, and then literally just a blob of super glue?
Yeah, a blob of super glue on the hook bait. If you noticed, I've sort of squared it off a little bit. That's just for the shank, just to sit nice and smooth. I literally blob the super glue onto that squared off bit and hold it on.
And how long do you have to leave it to dry before it, before it stays on for repeated casts?
A couple of minutes, mate. I literally just hold it on and just blow air on it, and eventually it will, it will stick about 2 minutes.
Brilliant. And to the actual hook, what sort of knot have you attached that with?
That's a Palomar knot. I do that because it's a non-strangulation knot,
Yep.
which basically means that it won't kink the line when it's pulling down tight, like maybe a blood knot or a grinner may well do.
Yeah, it won't cut through itself on
exactly
sort of
that.
a prolonged fight. So talking about the hook link, what material is that?
That's an N-gauge hook link, and
Okay.
that's £9 breaking strain.
Right, okay, so not too heavy, not too light. Just,
Exactly.
Okay, just enough to absorb the chance of a 30-pounder or something
Yeah.
snaring it. Right, as the hook link length, this is quite long, isn't it? Let's move down before I get to the actual float.
Yeah.
6 foot, would that be a fair length?
Yeah, it's got to be between 5 or 6 foot. I tend to do that with all my floater rigs. I want the hook bait away from the float, just to avoid spooking them.
Now, I've read, some places where people have used like 2 foot ones with bright fluoro ones at range. Any reason for that?
It might more act like as a bolt rig. If you use them nice and short, you might hook them a little bit quicker. However, today they've been a little bit cagey, so I want that hook bait as far away as possible.
And you got that light hook link out to the hook, and
Yeah.
I suppose when you're right on top of them like you are today, you can almost see them take the bait, can't you?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm actually striking today. As soon as I see him take the hook bait, which is pink, I can see it really well out there. I'm striking and it's
Bang,
working.
nailed.
Yeah.
All right, onto the actual interceptor system here. I can see a little ring swivel. You got it pulled in there nicely.
Yeah.
Firstly, what knot have you tied to the ring swivel end?
That's a blood knot. It's nice and strong. I'm not too bothered about the little kink there, mate. It's as long as it's strong, I'm happy.
It's had a bit of wear and tear today,
Yeah,
hasn't it? With action.
It probably needs tying back on, to be honest.
So this little system, it's got a little rubber socket there,
Yep.
and that ring swivel pulls in nicely. If I show you there, look, in it goes, and that really is like a bolt rig because it's got a slight concave there, hasn't
Exactly,
it?
yeah.
So that sits very low in the water, so almost that little orange spot is just barely visible, and that sits there in the body of water. So when the fish turns,
Yep.
you're already getting a bit of a bolt effect, aren't you?
You certainly are, yeah.
And these also cast really well, don't they?
They fly like bullets, yeah. I'm probably fishing 50 yards, and yeah, it could go further if you wanted to.
Okay, and let's talk, we'll look at it in more detail later in the show, but baiting wise, are you fishing a lot of bait? Are you having to get them competing, or have you taken a few risks and casts probably when they weren't so confident?
I did to start with, but the more the days worn on, sort of the more bait I've had to use. So 2 or 3 spodfuls every 20 minutes or so.
And you're leaving that,
Yeah,
and
I'm
then
leaving
the fish
that.
are starting to compete.
Exactly, and then I'm casting over the top of them and slowly drawing the float back and then leaving it in situ until I get a take.
Well, there you go, a really nice, simple floater setup, one that you can all tie, get out there and use it. You'll be catching carp like Mr. Armstrong in no time.
Well, fish number 7 is this grey leathery character of probably just over 20 pounds, and he is adding up to one of the best days floater fishing I've had in ages, possibly ever. I'm loving my time at this little intimate little venue, Hunt's Corner. I can't wait to get the rod back out and catch a few more.
It's been such a manic morning. We haven't actually had a chance to talk to you about the location and why we chose the spots we did. When we actually arrived, the lake was quite busy, so it actually meant that we couldn't, you know, get close together. We wanted to fish as a group, but Richard's further down the lake, Jimmy's next door. But me and Jimmy actually both fancied this swim, so we had a game of paper, scissors, rock. And once again, I seem to always win that little match. I beat Dovey last year on thinking tackle and James this time. But I really like this area. I came on a recce last week to do a magazine feature, and there was a lot of fish in this belly of water out there. And this swim commands the sort of back end of it, which means if you can fish at range, probably sort of 90 to 100 yards, you can fish maybe where a lot of people can't. So I was confident getting the zigs out there. And this morning, didn't fish last night, got the rigs out straight away, couple of spods over the top of sort of a soupy, cloudy mix, and the rod was away straight away, and I landed that lovely 20-pounder. But as the days progressed, the fish have become finicky. They're not really taking any mixers. They're not being activated by that spod mix. And as a result, I've had a couple of aborted takes, I think, you know, where the bobbin's gone up and it looks like it's going to go and it's just fallen away again. So what I'm going to do is just sort of take the rods out. I've kept a sort of line of bait going against those far reeds. It's about 110 yards to those reeds, and I've probably put about 20 spods throughout the day. Every hour or so I've put 5 spods out and just petered them along the reeds, nice and tight. The thinking behind that is to get fish feeding along there confident without any lines in the water, and hopefully later I might put a bottom bait rod out there, maybe nick a bonus big one, because there are some lovely big carp in Hunt's Corner, and you know, that's the plan. Maybe we can land a Oxfordshire 30, that would be brilliant. Further down the lake though, where the fish seem to be a lot more confident, that the lake funnels down, and in front of Jimmy and Richard, that the fish are feeding more confidently on the mixes. Can't even get them going here, but whether it's the sunlight or the breeze, but the fish are feeding more actively down there. And my old mate Richard's just invited me down. He seems to have caught a few more. I think he's on to 10 now. So I'm going to take him up on that offer. I'm going to take my floater rod down there and have a few hours with my old mate.
Yes.
Well, nothing like a bit of poaching up in your mate's swim, but he's had such a bag full, all 10 of them, that it was my turn to get in on the action. It's just a total world of differences, isn't it, from one end of the lake to the other, Rich? What
Just looks devoid of carp that are up for a feed at your end, mate. And yet down here they've been like piranhas at times, as you've seen. So
yeah, I mean, there's no difference in tactics. No, we're all using the same mixers. We're all gooing up our hook baits. You know, we're all using sort of similar colour of hook baits. The only difference is here there's a pod of fish that are really interested in taking the mixers. And I hope I don't come and snare one of the big ones out of the swim. I don't think it is, but
I'll let you off, mate.
The difference is between mine and Richard's setup is I've actually got a braided main line on my floater rod. I've always liked it. I've always felt that it actually converts maybe a few more bites than you would get on mono, because I suppose it hits the tip quicker, doesn't it, Rich?
And you haven't had like loads and loads of missed bites or anything. That's probably the first real positive bite you've had, and you've connected, haven't you? So.
Yeah, I had one where the braid twitched. You know, it folded on and took it, but I was just slightly late. But that was the first one that I suppose we made good contact with, and yeah, it was in. So it's so exciting though.
It is, mate. It's wonderful, isn't it? And just to warn you, mate, they've all gone right here, and all had a little go at getting round the side. But,
oh, okay.
But to a fish, they've come out again as long as you sort of steer them round. So.
But this is what sort of coming to these day ticket lakes in the summer's all about. You know, if you get fish feeding and your mates are generous like this, you can get in on the action, because when you get them going, you know, we haven't had a lot of sort of sustained opportunity to fish on the surface in recent times, have we?
No, this is going to be, what I mean, you know all the episodes, Al. This would be one of the biggest surface hits, won't it, for a little while? So.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I know Mr. Penning loves fishing off the top, so does Dovey, but you know, it's very difficult to actually plan a surface show, and we certainly didn't. We came prepared to fish zigs, possibly fish on the top, show you some solid bags, even some chod fishing, because this lake lends itself to so many different methods. But in this instance, it seems to be the surface baits and you know, middle of the road swims as well, don't you think, Rich?
Sorry, mate, just charging.
Yeah, I love
What's the feeling like on that braid, Al? Because when he charges away like that, you must be
yeah, well, I mean,
feeling every little pluck.
Yeah, I mean, it's important when you use braided mainline on your floater rod to always have a nylon leader. and that just gives you, under the rod tip, that little bit of elastic, but you still get the bite sort of conversion rate of the braided mainline.
Yeah.
It's all about really them hitting the rod tip, the same as when you fish out in the lake. I always like tight clutches, so when you get that pickup, they hit the tip, you know. But these floater special rods are awesome. Oh, we're in this time, mate. Nice one. Brilliant, at long last. Well, there you go. A lovely, spirited, hard fighting mirror for about £18. And I tell you what, they don't half pull on that light surface tackle. Thanks to my old mate Richard for letting me get in on the action, because it has been quiet down there. It's been really, really hard work. That heat has taken it out of us. So I think we're all going to chill out tonight, order a curry, sit back, and we'll see you in the morning.
Well, it's the end of day one, and I've had an unbelievable day's floater fishing. Big Rich up there's caught loads off the top, including a big one at £29. Al's chipped in with a couple as well, and we're absolutely shot to bits. It's been roasting hot, we're probably sunburnt, but Al's just ordered an Indian, so I can't wait for that one, and we'll see you in the morning.
Okay, well, my first take of the day has unfortunately snagged me round to the left here. It's the first one I've had that's actually gone left in the swim. Got so much line on me and swung back into these reeds, and for me, fish safety's got to come first, so I'm going to go in after him. I don't want to pull too hard and risk snapping the light hook link and possibly leaving the fish trailing, so I'm off in. I'm hopefully going to land my first one. Who knows, they're going Garrity over my shoulder here, so I'm aware that time is of the essence, but in we go and let's see if we can get him. Fingers crossed. Right, well, as you can see, I've managed to steer him round the reeds and just extricate him from this little hiding hole, and the light hook link has thankfully stayed intact, and now he's just plodding around under the rod tip like all of these fish have done so far. Really hope I can get him, because the first one of the day has got a significance to it. Even though I did well yesterday, you just never know what's going to happen one day to the next, and this guy's determined to get away. I don't want to let him get round there again. No, 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 no. Come on, back, 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 back. Really strong, these fish. Unbelievably strong in the edge. Oh, big old tail coming out. Here we go. Yes, safely done. Wicked.
Welcome to a new morning. As you can see, me and Bernard have helped ourselves to a fish each. This one's £23, and you'll notice that I'm in a brand new swim. I've actually moved down, packed up early this morning, didn't fish again last night. We were absolutely slaughtered from the previous day's action, especially you, mate.
Absolutely.
But you were possibly concerned that it wouldn't be the same again?
Well, I think you've always got that slight concern one day to the next, haven't you? Whether it's going to be the same, could it possibly be as good? And the answer came within 5 minutes, mate.
Brilliant. Well, I actually had to make a little hook bait tweak to catch this little fella. So when we put these fish back, we're going to have a look at the special hook baits that we've been using on the surface. We've had to wind the rods in as the carp behind us in Richard's swim are still chomping away on the mixers. So what we're going to do is actually have a look at the hook baits we've been using, because for all intents and purposes they're a little bit different than the norm, because people tend to like to use bits of cork or chum mixer and stuff like that, but we're doing it a bit differently, aren't we?
Absolutely. I think everyone's got their own little edges and tips that they'd use when it comes to float fishing hook baits, Al, but mine are these little 12mm pink ones, and they do two jobs for me. One is that I can see it out when it's set out amongst the pellets, and I actually tend to strike a lot of the bites. I don't just let them hook themselves. I need to know when mine is gone and whip the rod into it. So by having it a slightly different colour, even I can pick that out at range.
Yeah, because they've been quite finicky, haven't they, the bites? They haven't been like, the fish ain't been coming shoulders up and
No.
you know, folding over on the rod and everything else. They're literally...
Especially today, mate, they're sipping at it, and I need to notice when that goes from pink, when that turns black,
yeah,
bang.
It's in the mouth.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and so you shave them down, so
Yeah,
just
so
with a pair of scissors, I take it?
Yeah, I mean, just shave off a bit off both ends, and what that does, probably a little bit more than that, but what that does is allows the boilie to sit the same way up every time in the surface film.
Yeah, and if you can have a look at that there on your actual rig, that just gives the hook a sort of position as well, doesn't it? It sits nice and flat against the shank of the hook.
Yep.
And obviously it'll be that way up in the water.
Yeah, hangs down like a claw.
But as they're coming along, they're going to see that fleck of pink as well. And have you noticed that they're picking it out easier? Because there's so much, you're putting out loads of mixers, aren't you? You're putting out sort of 5 or 6 spods. The surface film is covered in them, yet you're putting it out and you're getting bites quite quickly, aren't you?
Certainly yesterday I was getting bites in amongst piles of pellet, so I can only assume that they did like the pink and they were picking that out. Today less so, but
they have been different. They're not feeding the same way. I've moved down. We've both managed to nick early bites, but it has been different. You're not getting 5 or 6 fish competing. You're getting 2s and 3s coming up, and they're sort of nudging the mixers rather than wolfing them down. Let's move on to some of these other ones as well, because these are a little bit different. These ones I've had soaking in like an almond gooey liquid for a little while now, but you'll actually notice the insides of them, Rich, are white, because they're originally milky toffee hook baits. Now, what I thought earlier was, because it was that way up, I felt the fish was seeing the white. So what I did was I just added literally a little bit of this raspberry stuff here. Like that, and I let it soak in, and you could just leave that in the sun for sort of 10 minutes in this heat, and it will just dry on there. It'll give it like a crust, if you like, and then when that went out there, the next cast, it was gone within 30 seconds. And
they taste the water, Al, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, well, that's going to bleed off nice and slowly, and on this occasion it seems that, you know, on this particular lake, it's the pink that's doing the business, isn't it? But, you know, I've done similar things there. You'll see with yellow baits, I've put on a pineapple liquid in this occasion and let it dry on there. And again, you know, you might go to one lake, it's pink doing it, but you go to another one and it's yellow doing it. Do you think there's still a case for sort of cork and bits and pieces like that?
Yeah, absolutely, because at the end of the day, it is a silhouette they're taking. And as long as it looks like the right shape and it's presented well, and yeah, of course they'll score as well, but you know, it's what you've got confidence in, and I think if you can add a little bit of an edge to your fishing, it might just get you an extra few bites on a day like this.
And what about buoyancy levels, Rich? Because, you know, when fish are finicky, if you do have a hook bait that behaves differently, or it's sat slightly lower in the water or too high, do you think that plays a part in it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really important. I think that's why often you mentioned cork. I think sometimes that can be a little bit too high in the water. You know,
they suck at it. It doesn't move.
It spins and vortexes, and you know the pellets take on water quite quickly, so they're going to sit and they're going to be a certain kind of, you know, weight effectively, and the cork is always going to sit very, very high in the water. So yeah, I think there is a degree to which they're eliminating things due to the buoyancy, Al, for sure.
Especially those finicky carp. So it's definitely a case for, you know, actually looking at what the mixers look like in the edge after, say, 20 minutes in the water, 30 minutes, and actually trying to make sure your hook bait is not only a similar size but also sitting the same way in the water, because it's got a hook on the end of it.
Absolutely. So you've got, as soon as you tie your hook bait on, drop it in the edge, have a look, see how your hook is sitting, make sure that it looks like a pellet, you know, to start with. That's your primary consideration, or whatever you're feeding, a bit of mixers, pellets or whatever.
Okay, great stuff. Well, there you go, a little brief chat about hook baits. Hopefully you can apply it to your own fishing, and make sure you get on these fluorescent ones, because they definitely do seem to get you quicker bites.
Well, the swim is absolutely rocking on day 2. I've had the rod out, it was out about 5 minutes and I nicked my first one. And then I've had number 2. So 2 fish within about 20 minutes. They're still going garrety on them floaters. So I'm going to continue feeding them, get this one back. Seem to be catching the small ones down this end. But I'm going to keep going. Hopefully we'll nick a bigger one a bit later on.
Well, we've looked at the rigs that we've been using on the surface, also touched on the hook baits. Now let's have a look at the hardware, because I think having a nice balanced setup when you're fishing on the surface is really important, not only to enjoy the fight more, but also to ensure that you keep those hook holds in at close quarters. So firstly, let's have a look at the reel. Now, it's a fixed ball setup with an excellent little drag on it. This is a Korda, but I do like the drag. It's quick release, so I can have it from locked on to loose, so that, you know, in the early stages of the fight I can quickly just twitch it and the fish is free to run until it slows down, and just another little notch on the front of the spool and I'm in control of the fish again. You'll also notice on there I've got braid. Rather than using mono all the way through, I have a nice sort of braid backing there with a mono leader. Now the braid, I believe, converts a better ratio of takes to hooked fish when fishing on the surface. I've noticed in the past when I used to use mono, I had to strike everything. When I turned to braid, I could actually sometimes put the rod on the floor, be feeding the swim, and they'd just hook themselves. They'd hit the rod tip. As soon as they sort of flop over and take the mixer, the rod tip will buckle and they're hooked. So that's a nice little tip. I think it probably could convert 20 or 30% extra bites into actual fish on the bank. But I do think the mono leader is really important, because it does take that sort of harshness of the braid away, because it is very, you know, braid hasn't got any stretch in it at all. So you do want a little cushion of mono there, just to, when you get them under the tip, to absorb those lunges and keep you in control of the fish, so you don't tear that hook out right at the last minute. Moving on to the rod itself, this is actually a longbow floater special. Now it's 2¼ pound test curve, which is really, really soft for a carp rod, but it does still have a fair bit of backbone, but it's got a great little tip action, and you would have noticed on the fights that I've had, the tip's been lovely and arced over, but I've still got a good bit of control with the fish. Not only does it absorb those lunges under the tip, keeps you in good control and a really enjoyable fight. And that's an important part of when you're floater fishing. Make sure you've got tackle that lets you enjoy the battle, because that's part of the fun. You see them take the bait, that's exciting enough. If you sort of then paired that with a strong 3½ pound test curve carp rod and a big old reel, it sort of takes that fun factor out of it. Well, there you go, a nice simple setup. You can have this packed away in the car, and it is important to make sure you do match it to the situation. Don't get yourself a 3 pound test curve rod and a big pit. You know, enjoy your fishing. Floater fishing is so exciting. When you see them taking, you want to enjoy that battle all the way to the bank, and this type of setup really does help. Just have it packed away in the car. When you're blessed with weather like this, get it out, get the mixers in, and get catching those carp off the top.
Definitely the prettiest carp that I've had so far on this session. I don't know how much he weighs, maybe 17, 18, an absolute push. They're continuing to feed on the surface out there, so I've got a good feeling that I'm going to get some more today. It's heating up, and so is the action, so I'll get her back. Well, it's really frustrating stuff at the moment. There aren't herds of fish out there. They're sort of in 3s and 4s, and they've got really cagey this afternoon for some reason. I mean, between the 3 of us, we've caught quite a lot of fish, so maybe that's why. One thing you'll just notice there that is I cast past the fish all the time, you know, over the top of the bait, and then I quietly draw the float back. By doing that, you're not going to spook them as much. If you're bombing your floats in straight on top of the fish, they're just going to flee the area. So cast over the back, hold your rod nice and high, and just reel it really, really slowly into the feeding fish zone, and hopefully it'll work. Well, will it be 3rd time lucky? I've pulled out of 2 fish in the last 5 minutes. That's something about floater angle. It can be so frustrating at times. You know, you've got to keep an eye on the hook bait at all times, and as soon as that fish takes it and snatches it, you've got to strike. And Unfortunately, the last 2 times I've been a little bit slow, but my eyes are fixated on that floater now. And these Polaroids really help in that because they take some of the glare off the surface, so that's a good tip. Always have some polarising sunglasses when you're trying to watch your floater. If I'm using a pink hook bait today and it's standing out quite well, but if you're using a normal floater to mimic the free offerings, it can be really tricky to see. So often it pays to keep an eye on your float, and as soon as your float twitches and you've seen the swell behind it, strike, because generally it's a take. I've got a fish coming up to it now. Here we go, boys. Oh. Well, finally, I've managed to hook one. It's taken a good half an hour to 40 minutes to get their confidence back. I mean, both Rich and I have had a lot of fish now, into sort of double figures. I think this is sort of my 13th to 14th fish that I've hooked. I've landed 10. I know Bernard's caught quite a few now as well. So that's Big Rich, by the way. And this one's putting up a good account for itself so far. As you notice, one of the things that was really important was casting over the top of them and then just drawing the float back nice and quietly, something that not enough people do, and trust me, it does spook them. I'm going to concentrate a little bit more now because it's really going hard, this one. You're joining me in the latter stages of the fight now. She's slowly coming in, ever so slowly. Come on, girl. Come on, girl, I waited long enough for you. Come on, keep coming. Oh, it's just wallowing. Hope this tiny little hook stays in. Don't rush at this point, just gently coax them into the net and they'll be yours eventually. Come on. Absolutely dripping with sweat. Come on. Looks like it might have picked up something else's line actually in the way in. Oh, come on, yeah, it has as well. Come on. Come on, come on. Is she there? Yeah, she's there. Another floater caught carp. Well, after an epic battle, this is the result. A lovely, dumpy Hunt's Korda mirror. Absolutely black as your hat. And I'm well happy with that one. You liked a floater, didn't you? Well, it's the middle of the afternoon and the action's really hotting up now. I've got loads of carp out there, pack-manning each biscuit, and I'm hopeful of a few more. So as we go into evening, I'll put the rod back out. Hopefully we'll catch a bigger one.
Well, have a look at this one, 24 pounds on the button, and you'll notice I've moved swims once again back to where I originally was yesterday, and now I've managed to snare this off the top, and this time I'm returning the favour. I've got Richard joining me up here, and hopefully we're going to enjoy a few more hours and maybe bank an Oxfordshire 30 off the top. So many chances here. Some bigger fish down this end, and it's just such a surprise that they've all ended up where I was. Moved this morning, but a slight change in wind direction, almost nondescript. If you didn't look at the surface drift, you wouldn't be able to tell there was even a breeze blowing, but it was enough to push these fish. I do think they follow all that sort of surface film along the lake, and they have. It's gone from one end of the lake to the other, and they followed it, and I've got a really good chance here. There's fish all around it, and this is just a total contrast to yesterday. if I put mixers out yesterday, I might have got one solitary carp sort of milling around, but today there's loads of them. But it's important to grease up that hook link with a little bit of Vaseline or lip balm, but just leave the last sort of 3 or 4 inches above the hook eye without grease. So that just dimples in and it breaks up the line of the hook link. And probably just gives you a little slight edge as opposed to having it all greased up or ungreased, where the line's likely to sink a little bit and sag through the swim, and that definitely puts them on edge without a doubt.
Well, Ali's generosity certainly paid off for me in the shape of this cracking plump linear, probably about 15 pounds, taken on the same surface tactics. He's got to be my prettiest fish of the session. And just as I was landing him, Jimmy's landed his biggest of the session, so I think we should go and take a look at that now.
Well, what an amazing end to day 2. My biggest fish of the trip, an ounce under 25 pounds. Today has been absolute carnage in the swim. I've caught around 15 carp so far. I know Rich and Ali have also caught some today, and it's been scorching out there. We've got 1 day left, and it's going to be very hard to top this.
Oh,
yes! It swam away with it. That was a proper bite. Well, what an exciting start to the morning. I'm poaching up Richard's swim again. Basically, being next door to him, he's already helped himself to one. They were taking the mixers, and for the last hour, we've been fiddling around, whittling the mixers down, whittling the pop-ups down, and the fish have been totally getting away with it. And it's just been unbelievable, really, like the contrast in the last few days on the mixers. It's mad, isn't it, really?
yeah, they've been like shoulder piranhas out there this morning, but they just won't touch the hook bait.
And then, well, we had a little friend, you might know him, by the name of Darryl Peck. He's come down for a spot of fishing himself, and he actually showed us, you know, a method that's pretty traditional when you mixer fishing. I normally do it with the fake mixers of just side hooking the boilie, and just a sort of more neutral colour of pop-up, just a 12mm one, side hooked, and just whittled down the sides of it, and the next fish that come up really took it confidently, and to be honest, didn't even have to strike. It was a comedy of errors before then, because fish were coming up, taking the bait, and sort of just, it's out before you've even had a chance to react. But on that occasion, one fish come up, missed it, and another thing come up behind. The whole thing disappeared, the float went under. It was a proper floater bite, you know. They're the ones, a 5-foot twitch, you can't miss them. So
I think he was already going at 30 miles an hour when you actually connected.
Yeah, it just shows, doesn't it, you know, like.
He carried on.
You know, we've all used slightly contrasting rigs. Jimmy's had the sort of super glued pink one on. He's done really well, but he's been using quite big hooks. He's been using like the size 8 wide gapes. Richard's been sort of using a traditional hair rig, as have I, where we've been sort of trapping the shank, almost the same as Jimmy's rig, but just with a hair. And this fish is absolutely rinsing us. That braided main line is so exciting on it. But you've got to have that little mono section that we spoke about when we went through the hardware. But it's so much fun, you know. It can be so frustrating floater fishing, but at the same time, you just can't beat it when you finally connect with one after the best part of an hour and a half of having your pants pulled down and laughed at. But it's a great feeling and a really fitting end to a cracking few days, Rich, don't you agree?
Absolutely, mate. What an enjoyable session. And actually the best thing for me about this morning was the way you worked into getting that bite, because they were absolutely having it out there, but just not having the hook bait.
Yeah, I mean, we've changed the... Whoa, this one's... I'm gonna have to get wet for this, Rich, I reckon, mate. Yeah, I mean, we greased up the hook link, didn't we? Put a bit more lip balm on it to keep it up. You know, we were trying every trick in the book, really. Worked as a bit of a team. Rich has been putting the bait out. And we've been making rig changes. And it just shows, even on the surface, that, you know, you do have to be cute with these fish. And sometimes that side hooked one, which basically is hiding the hook a bit better, you know. That was obviously Daryl's theory with it. Let's just... Oh. Good job I'm tall, innit, Rich? Whoa!
Oh, look at that.
But this is the important thing with it. Oh. With a soft rod.
Oh. That's outrageous.
With a soft rod, you do.
Strong fish, Al, these.
Yeah, very strong. The sunlight and post spawning as well. They're all juiced up, aren't they? Being on the steroids and the mixers, they've had a fair fill of them, mate, haven't they?
They have.
But to be fair, I mean, you reckon? To be fair, per man, we've probably used a 15 quid bag of pellets.
If that.
Oh, they're absolute battles on this light tackle. You can't beat it, really. It's so much fun. But you know, that hook link material is just, you think like the battles they've had to go through around these reeds and that. And I don't want to speak too soon, but it's performed really well, hasn't it? You know. Oh, that's close. I thought flicking off a fin. Won't be breaking any records, but tell you what a lovely end to a great few days of fishing with some good pals, and not fishing at night, having a good sleep, and then just surface fishing in the day. You can't beat it, can you? How rare is it, Rich?
I'm going in, mate. That's a nice fish. And after all this effort, we're not.
Well, it'd be. Look at those shoulders.
Yeah.
Lovely dorsal fin on it. Come on, mate, get in that net. We're all burnt. Go on, lads. Yeah! Yes! Quality. What a morning. Epic. Well done, Big Bernard. Cheers, lads.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a big one, mate.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Unbelievable. Well folks, it looks like we're ending exactly the way we started, with a hatful of fish. This one that had that epic battle with me is 25 pounds on the nose, so a real cracker to be caught off the surface. Boys, have you enjoyed yourselves?
Superb trip, yeah.
Rich?
Absolutely loved it, mate. More than I could have ever expected.
If you want more tips and tricks from this series of Thinking Tackle, check out thinkingtackle.com. All that's left to say from us is thank you very much for watching, and see you on the bank sometime.